And it should be up on our website within a couple days after this session. So you'll be able to rewatch this at that point. And again, please make sure to keep yourself on mute when you're not speaking so that everyone can hear. Go ahead to the next slide, Anushka. So this is the team you're going to hear from today. This is also the primary team that leads the Champions Institute program, though not the only staff here at Smart Growth America that help instruct the workshop sessions for the program. My name again is Rayla Bellis. I'm the Director of Thriving Communities at Smart Growth America. I've been with SGA for about 13 years. I've been in this current position for a little less than a year. Before that, I did our technical assistance work, mostly on transportation. I've worked in communities around the country on complete streets. I've done a lot of work with state departments of transportation. In earlier iterations of my work at Smart Growth America, I've worked a lot on our signature national reports. And I currently run the Thriving Communities team, which houses the staff that work on the National Complete Streets Coalition, among other programs. And then my colleague on the left here, the Honorable John Robert Smith, he's a senior policy advisor at Smart Growth America. He also serves as the chair of Transportation for America, which is one of our programs. And previously, a number of years ago, he was the mayor of Meridian, Mississippi for 16 years. And his signature project, the restoration of Union Station in downtown, is well known nationally as one of the best multimodal transportation projects in the country. And he, through his work on technical assistance at Smart Growth America, has worked with well over 100 communities of all sizes. So really excited to be continuing to work with him. And then Anushka Thacker is a program associate on the Thriving Communities team. She coordinates a lot of our technical assistance work, and she will be the point of contact for this application process moving forward, and her contact information will be shared shortly. So this is Smart Growth America. This is our organization, in case you happen not to be familiar with us. We're a national nonprofit. We're based in the Washington, D.C. area, but we work in communities around the country, and our staff are based elsewhere as well. This is our mission. We envision a country where no matter where you live or who you are, you can enjoy living in a place that's healthy, prosperous, and resilient. We're also a collection of programs that work on pieces of this mission to support the broader mission. So we have teams that work on transportation, complete streets. We have teams that work on land use and development decisions, economic development. We approach this work in a multidisciplinary way. Go ahead to the next slide. And we tackle our work from several different approaches, I guess. So we do lots of technical assistance all around the country. We work at the local level. We also work with regional agencies and state agencies across all of our different programs. So our technical assistance is often very multidisciplinary. We work in communities of all sizes. We work in big cities. We also work in very rural and small town places, and we bring those lessons and experiences and challenges to other technical assistance recipients and to programs like the Champions Institute, as well as to our other work, which includes advocacy primarily at the federal level, and thought leadership, by which we mean things like our signature national reports and research to help guide the smart growth movement, and also signature major events like our annual Equity Summit. We're really pleased to be partnering with the CDC again on this program for its third iteration with the Division of Nutrition, Physical Activity and Obesity, or DNPAO, through their Active People Healthy Nation initiative, which is a initiative involving lots of organizations like us, as well as local agencies and individuals working to make 27 million people more physically active by 2027. Go ahead to the next slide, Anushka. So we know that physical activity is really important for public health outcomes. And many people in America are not getting the physical activity they need for their health. We know that about 31 million people who are older adults are inactive. We know that only about 40% of school-aged children who live within a mile of school actually walk to school. And we know that only 1 in 5 adults and high school students are meeting their physical activity guidelines. So we have a lot of work to do. Part of our work here at Smart Growth America on programs like the Champions Institute is to make it so that people can meet their physical activity needs and reach those good health outcomes like reduced chronic disease, like improved quality of life and mental health outcomes not just through recreation and exercise, but actually as a part of their daily routines, as a part of getting to work, getting to school, getting to grocery stores, being able to take those trips actively so that they're getting that daily physical activity. Next slide. Part of the issue and a lot of the emphasis of our work, as well as the Champions Institute, is the fact that in many communities around the country, that simply isn't possible. People aren't able to walk, bike, roll, or take transit to reach daily destinations because it's unsafe to do so, because streets aren't safe to walk, because it's too far, it's not convenient to reach places by walking, biking, or taking transit, so people have no choice but to drive, and they aren't able to get that physical activity. The chart on the left here is from our annual Dangerous by Design report, which our next one's going to be coming out in just another month and a half or so. We track trends in pedestrian fatalities, people being struck and killed while walking around the country. And we're seeing this alarming rise in deaths of people walking, being struck by drivers, by cars. And if you go to the next slide, you can see that this risk isn't being shared equally. People in lower income neighborhoods are at much higher risk of being struck and killed while walking than people living in wealthier neighborhoods. And if you go to the next slide, unfortunately, you see these similar disparities by race and ethnicity. Black or African American people and American Indian or Alaskan Native people are at much greater risk of being struck and killed while walking per capita. And of course, we see a lot of health outcomes showing similar disparities. So there's a whole system here. And this work is really important in making it so that we can make the conditions safe so that everyone can walk, bike, otherwise travel actively to reach their daily destinations without taking their lives into their hands. Go ahead to the next slide. So a lot of our work with the CDC and a lot of the emphasis of the Champions Institute is on this, on increasing physical activity by making those safe walking, biking, and rolling connections, again, not just for exercise and leisure, but to actually reach the places that people need to go daily, making it so people can go from their housing to their jobs or to the grocery store and healthcare without having to get into a car, with an emphasis on the people that most need that access. And we know that this problem requires multidisciplinary solutions. So it's not just about making streets safer, it's also about how we make decisions about how communities develop to bring those decisions closer together. It's about how we approach economic development. It's about how we ensure that we have policies in place so that when places do get nice infrastructure for walking and biking, that doesn't lead to people being priced out of the communities they've lived in. So we bring that multidisciplinary focus to the Champions Institute and to our work. Next slide. And of course, we aren't the only organizations working on the Active People Healthy Nation initiative. Lots of other organizations are involved. Lots of pieces of this work are not as much of a focus of ours, but we focus on this first piece, activity-friendly routes to everyday destinations, with that equitable and inclusive lens through all of it. So that's some of the background for our partnership with the CDC and the foundation of this program, the Champions Institute. And I will turn things over to John Robert, who's going to tell you more about the program, the structure of it, who's eligible, those types of things. So go ahead, John Robert.
Thank you, Rayla. And to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon. You know, all of us in elected office, or have been, we talked about wanting to improve the quality of life of the people that we serve. Well, the main determiner of the quality of life is the quality of the health of our people. I was disturbed by the obesity rates of Mississippians when I was mayor, so I challenged my community to lose 10,000 pounds collectively within a 6-month period of time. Now, you can't make Mississippians get exercise, but what you can do is make it almost an afterthought, easy and an enjoyable experience. So we invested in our sidewalks, our trails, our bike trails, connecting people to healthcare, people to their destinations, people to the needs of life, whether it's a child walking to school or a senior walking to an evening's entertainment in the downtown. Well, the CDC also realizes that if you want to change people's health outcomes, you have to change their patterns of mobility. And to do that, you have to invest in and alter the built environment. And as you all know, that starts at the local level. And as important as planners and public works staff are, it's the elected officials that have to raise their hand and vote to spend revenue in changing and shaping that built environment that can improve the health outcomes of the citizens they serve. Next slide. So the Champions Institute is open to currently elected officials. Now, you may be elected but not sworn in. That's acceptable, but it's not for a former elected. It's not for appointed officials. It is for elected officials. Now, support staff may assist that elected official throughout the Champions Institute, but the elected officials themselves are expected to be the participant at each of the sessions and throughout the process. Local elected official means a mayor, a city council member, a city alderman, whatever you call the legislative branch of your local city government. It's also open to county elected officials, and it's open to tribal officials as well. The Champions Institute will flow between September and December of 2022. We have divided it into 6 learning modules or classes, if you will, taking you from the basics of complete streets and how we get to better health outcomes, all the way through how you communicate to your other local elected officials, to your citizens, to your own staff, and to the media. So while we will provide experts from around the country to work through each one of these 6 learning modules, we don't leave you without also helping you learn how to articulate your vision and the impact that it will have to those stakeholders that you must convince to move forward. After the 6 modules, you'll be expected to develop a project that you will take all of you that you have learned and work to implement within that project. Now, the project may be the creation of a complete streets ordinance. It may be developing a better land use plan for your community in your city center. It may be a project implemented in the built environment itself, actually something you build. It could be a demonstration project that is not intended to be permanent, but is intended to be illustrative, but it certainly could be a permanent project. We will give you time to develop that project. We will also give you office hours where we will be available for you to reach out and ask advice or bounce ideas off of any of us. And then there will be a final report that will close out this Champions Institute, this 3rd institute, and where you will actually share your successes and your lessons learned with other champions that will be a part of your class. Now, the learning modules will take place on Thursdays between 4 and 6 Eastern time. We know that many of you have council meetings or supervisor meetings on Tuesdays. Wednesdays can be problematic in certain regions of the country as there are other obligations on Wednesdays. Mondays are always too busy getting you and your staff back to work after the weekend. So we find Thursdays works extremely well. And in creating the 4 to 6 Eastern time window, we think that allows each of the time zones to participate at a reasonably comfortable hour of the day. We do expect each champion, that's each elected official, to attend each of these modules, to be present for the full 2 hours. You may have a staff member join with you, but you would need to be present during that 2-hour session. If there is an emergency and you cannot make one, we do record these modules, and you may view the module, and then we'll send you some questions that we expect you to answer from what you've learned from that module. Each module will have plenty of time for you to talk to your fellow classmates during that set aside of 2 hours. And it's always inspiring what you learn from one another and how willing you are to share things you've tried that didn't work, and of course, most especially your successes. Next slide. So our first year, 2021, you can see where our champions came from. It's roughly a class of, I believe it's 20 or 21 selected out of those who applied. This is competitive. We do try to seek a geographic spread. You will notice there are large cities and very small cities. Our second Champions Institute, Anushka, we began to fill in more parts of the country as well. So we're very mindful of the type of commitment being made by the elected official and the region they come from and the size of the community, because we learn from small cities as well as from large cities. So it's very diverse, and we seek to achieve that. Next slide. This is just, I have 2 examples of what former champions, actually from the last class, have had to say. Chaps Paduri is a council member from Pacific Grove, California, and he wrote to us saying, as an immigrant and a complete newcomer to public office, I am extremely grateful to the Active People Healthy Nations Champions Institute in enabling me to become a civic agent of positive change. The Complete Streets program, steered by a panel of experts in the field, allows one to grasp fundamental concepts while teaching you what to think critically about. A vision of health for a better world is a call to care wisely for our communities, our resources, and Earth. The course has woven together a national network of organizations, resources, and individuals to compassionately care for the common world that we live in, ensure equity, and pass a healthy planet to our future generations. Next. In reflecting a smaller place, Councilmember Sue Honia from McGee, Mississippi, representing a town of less than 5,000 people, the Champions Institute brought big-time ideas and solutions to a Mississippi town. No matter how small a city, the Champions Institute interacted with the small guy as well as the big guy. The Champions Institute challenged my thinking, exposing a totally different way to look at McGee, Mississippi. Next slide. So I believe very much in leveraging the voice of local leaders. Whether a senator or a congressman may like a particular mayor, council member, or county supervisor, they will take a call from them. And if you look at the Jobs Act, IIJA, just signed into law, there's heavy funding for complete streets, for sidewalks, for passenger rail, for transit, for all of the things that we either care about or have to be able to leverage to build a better community. They're in that bill because we worked with local leaders for them to press their congressmen and their senators for its inclusion and funding. And that was both on the Senate side and the House side. So whether you are a Republican or a Democrat or not elected by party, you have a voice that not only needs to be heard, but is a change agent at the federal level and provides opportunities for all of us. Next slide. So we provide over these 6 modules experts in their field, whether it's in funding, whether it's in communications, whether it's in design, whether it's in best practices. You will learn from those who have actually done this work. Most have been elected officials themselves. And then you also learn one from the other during this process. Next slide. So you'll look at your land use, and we will explore ways to alter the land use patterns, because the very decisions you make about where you put housing, retail, other investments in your community directly impacts people's ability to access them and access them in a healthy way. And we saw this so clearly during COVID. As awful and painful as COVID was, it did open us up to new ways of thinking about our community and how we access not only the needs of life, but each other. You'll also be given examples of other projects, demonstration projects, and we'll talk about ways to make changes that may or may not be permanent. Next slide. We're going to do more than that, though. Within the Champions Institute, we've created what we call a Champions Corner. And as you're selected to be a part of the Champions Institute, you'll have access and you will have a password that is only for you to access the Champions Corner. And in that, you will see the reports, analyses, funding possibilities, best practices, examples, ideas, all of that will be curated within the Champions Corner so that you will have ready access to it. Next slide. So the expert-led classes are critically important, and we will ask you to bring your issues to us for a class. So while some may be some of our technical assistance is certainly in person, we also will ask you to bring an issue or a problem that you have. You can actually bring the visuals with it, and we can help talk through it with the experts that we will have as a part of our team. And then, of course, as I said, learning one from the other is a great joy to see occur, and the spontaneity is enriching. Next slide. So as you develop your work plan for your project, again, it may be how you change your ordinances or even create ordinances to support the healthy routes to everyday destinations. It can be a demonstration project. You will develop this plan working with us. We'll be here to advise you and to make recommendations or suggestions, but it's your project. And at the end of the program, you're going to report those results back. So let me make it clear that developing your project is a part of the Champions Institute, and reporting on it is a part. So you must complete all 6 of the modules, develop your project, and report on your project to have completed the Champions Institute and be recognized nationally for doing so by the CDC and for others that are a part of our network. Next slide. And this is an example of what Oxford, Mississippi did as their project. This is actually a project that was built taking East Jackson Street in Oxford, Mississippi, which is the home of the University of Mississippi, located in North Mississippi. If you do not know the area, lovely downtown with a courthouse square in the middle and historic structures all around, but it had become a car-centric area. It needed to be more walker and biker friendly. It's a college town, and the college is located very close to the downtown. Well, it was COVID that spurred Oxford to look at different ways of keeping restaurants and retail open by allowing them into the built environment, but it had to be walkable and bikeable, and no, they didn't need it to be purely a thoroughfare for the automobiles. So they redesigned, and you see the streetscape there. They totally altered their design plan because of what they learned through the Champions Institute. They have now implemented this project, and it has been a great success for Oxford, Mississippi, with significant retail returns to the city because of the investment, and of course, a tremendous reshaping of the quality of life for those who live, work, and learn within the Oxford envelope. I will now turn it over to Anushka, who will talk to you about the details of and the timeline for application. Anushka.
Thank you, John. Oh. I'm the only one getting a sound back. Okay, I guess we're fine. Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so jumping onto after that exciting section, jumping onto some a little boring but important process related information about the application. Some of the key things about the application process: we are, as you've heard, currently accepting applications for a third round of Champions Institute. I will be your main point of contact if you have any process related questions, and I will send, or I guess Rayla is pasting the link to the application and my email on the chat. As you can see here, there are certain application eligibility criteria to apply. As John Robert already mentioned, you need to be a local elected official from the US, including territories and DC. You need to commit the time required to be actively participating in the modules and project. While a staff person can support you throughout, they cannot substitute your attendance in your place for the sessions. And last but definitely not the least, and a slightly obvious point, but it's your enthusiasm and interest that we're looking for in complete streets and building activity-friendly routes, which will be key for us to look for as you apply for the program. Next slide. So some of the key dates, the applications are open. We are accepting applications and they're due in a little over 2 weeks on June 10th. We will notify selected and not selected applicants by the week of July 11th, a month-ish from when applications are due. And we will kick off the program in September 2022. Onward to Q&A, and I'll stop sharing my screen so we can see.
Yeah, so at this point, you're welcome to drop questions in the chat and we can answer them that way. You can also use the raise your hand function in Zoom, which if you happen not to have encountered it so far over the past couple of years, it's in the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. You should be able to click a raise your hand option. Go ahead, Holly Berry.
Hello. I am the mayor of a small town in Tennessee, Red Bank, Tennessee. And I was wondering, because I will actually be on the ballot in November, and this is for active elected officials also. What if I lose? Because it starts in September, but then the election's not till November.
Good question. John Robert, what do you think? I think currently active elected officials are eligible and you wouldn't get booted out of the program at that point if you lose, but.
I think John Robert, you're muted.
Sorry. Yes, you're currently you will be an active elected official when you apply.
And just hope for the best.
Yes, hope for the best.
And after you apply, spend all of your time trying to get reelected.
Oh yeah, I'll check that box.
It's a great question because this is the first year where that's probably going to be a major consideration. So
Thank you.
Other questions?
Susan Cable, I saw your hand.
You're muted.
Okay, now.
Now we hear you.
Okay, thank you. I am a former state senator, and been out of office for 20 years, but just having become incredibly interested in all of complete streets from its inception until now. But in our town, Macon, Georgia, has last year passed a complete streets ordinance. But they're just now starting to regroup, appoint the people, and do whatever it tells you to do in order to have a complete streets program going. So we're really kind of behind the 8 ball as to a proposal that you're talking about us doing for a project. And I'm just wondering, should I have no county commissioners that I think, and there are about 8 or 9 of them, that even know anything about this that I know of. Nobody said one word about it, but I've just kind of caught on to it, looking at it over the years, thinking this is where transportation is headed. We're not going to have concrete as much as we're going to have complete streets. But I'm just need some guidance about who should I go to and who should I talk to? Should I have had, which I didn't understand that this was strictly for elected officials. I'm just not sure of what my plan should be, just as a former state senator, but now just an active grandma.
Well, I know Macon, Georgia well. So I knew Mayor Rickard over the years.
Yes.
And we did 3 different technical assistance workshops in Macon about the downtown and the importance of the downtown in financing all of Macon-Bibb County combined city-county government. So I know Macon well, and whether it's the currently serving mayor or one of the council members or one of the supervisors, you need to find one that has a commitment to the good things that have already begun in Macon. In the downtown, you've got a rich history there. You mix of citizens there that actually tell a great story to the outside world, and find one that believes in that genuinely. And the fact that, investing in the kinds of things we're talking about is good for the local economy. I mean, that's what the young workforce and those who hire them are going to be looking for the future. So find one of those local elected officials that you feel has a zeal in their heart anyway, that you're not already understands that what they do there in telling the Macon-Bibb story is important to their future economic well-being, and then ask them to apply. There will be a place where those can offer letters of support or recommendation, and you could certainly do that on behalf of that individual, but they would need to apply.
Okay, but if they, it looks like we wouldn't be ready for this round doing what you're asking.
You don't have to have a project that you're ready to build. Your project will be the planning for the implementation point that will occur a year from now, 2 years from now.
But is this the 3rd round of doing this and it's not going to be done again?
No, we anticipate that it'll be done. Rayla, you would be able to talk more about that.
We hope to be able to continue the program. This is the last round that we'll be doing with our current CDC cooperative agreement, but we're already fundraising for future rounds. But to John Roberts' point, many of the current champions don't have a complete streets ordinance currently. In some cases, that ends up being their project, actually. So you aren't necessarily behind if you're just adopting a complete streets ordinance. So I would still consider applying.
Okay, well, that's great. Thank you.
Ordinance you have, it could be the review of that ordinance and putting teeth in it, because some complete streets ordinance leave too many loopholes, so you can do it if you want to. Well, that's not a complete streets ordinance. It should be about every time you invest in the built environment, you're assuming it will be a complete street. So maybe it's a review of your ordinance to improve it, to give it greater strength. Maybe the ordinance is fine. It's a matter of implementation. Here are the steps to actually implement it. And here is the first place in Macon-Bibb that makes sense to implement to show success. So it doesn't have to be a project ready to build. I just gave you an example of one that was.
Thank you.
And others of you may be on, perhaps some of you are staff and are considering recommending this to the local elected official that you work with. And certainly we've had champions that are excited to become a member because of what they've heard from their planning staff or their public works staff. So that's perfectly fine if you are one of those appointed officials, and you could certainly join your elected official. But again, you can't sit in place of them. The elected official has to be a part of the whole process. And one way to, what CDC sees is that with each Champions Institute, we build more and more capacity across the states that we work in. And we expect our champions, we found that they do so, they reach out to their municipal league, their county association, and they begin to spread that word. Here's what I learned. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we see as the benefits. And as they tell that story, you take the built environment and the changes within it to scale, and you begin to change regions and states, not just one municipality, although for that municipality or that county, it's critically important. You know, a lot of the Champions Institute helps you learn where you're standing in your own way. Any elected official will know often their ordinances prevent them from doing the things they want to do. And of course, I always took the position that if it wasn't one of those 10 things that the Lord lays out pretty clearly we're to do or not to do, then that means we can change it. And a city ordinance can be changed by a vote of the council. So just because it's not in your ordinance at present, just because your ordinance requires 2 parking spaces for every residence in the downtown, doesn't mean it has to stay that way.
Anushka answered a question directly in the chat, but I'll just raise it just to make sure that everyone caught this. There is no cost to participate in this program. It's free, other than, of course, the time commitment of attending the 6 sessions and planning and starting to implement your project. Otherwise, free, no dollar cost. Any other questions?
I have another one.
Sure.
I don't know if other people raising their hands or not. I can't see everybody. But what about the first 2 classes that you've had of champions? Have they gone back to their communities and found funding? How do they go about it? If they've got a plan, they got a project they want to do, how open is everybody to the state to funding or local to funding, and have any of them done that successfully?
A good question, and the answer is yes. A number of them have done so. And that's why it's important that one of the modules is strictly about how you communicate the value of what you're doing to first your fellow elected officials on the council or the board of supervisors or within the tribal government, because you have to convince them first so that you can get the vote. Then you have to convince your own staff, because you may have a fire chief that will say, oh, we can't do that. I can't get the ladder truck around that corner. Well, we can give you chiefs that they can talk to say, oh, yes, you can do this, and here's how you do it. So we understand that you have to be able, your own staff has to be able to see their way through it. Then you have to be able to communicate to the business community, which is a separate type of conversation. Then to the neighborhood that you've chosen to work in. They have to understand that it's something you're doing with them, not to them. Then you have to be able to articulate this to the broader media so they can get your story out. So we work through that with you. Then when it comes to the funding, we have places that have worked very successfully with their state departments of transportation on funding, because each state department of transportation has federal funding with specific guidelines, and they don't want to send any money back to the feds. So they are looking for good projects that they can be involved in. It's not only transportation funding that's available. And we worked with now Oxford not only applied for funding at the state level, they also applied for funding from at least 2 foundations. And then they were pushed over the top by a grant from a communications, a large nationwide broadband and internet communications company, with a grant from them. And you know, we can tell you more about those grants that are available. But it's usually several sources of revenue that are put together. And what we need are local electeds with an imagination, a willingness to learn, a willingness to see the built environment in a slightly different way, perhaps, than they thought in the past. And then I think with the tools provided, you will see that there are resources, whether it's in the implementation phase or the planning and the creation phase.
Thank you.
And Jen, Robert, I'll just quickly add that complete streets and safety are a big emphasis of the Federal Highway Administration, currently a big focus of theirs. So I think this program does help make you competitive for some of those programs that they're rolling out, like the Safe Streets for All program that just launched within the past couple of days.
And there are generally in almost every grant that's in IIJA, there is a set aside for rural places, small towns and rural places. So don't be put off by the fact that you're a small community, if you are.
Any other questions? Just give folks a moment to think of any. Well, thank you all again for joining us. Please don't hesitate to reach out to Anushka if questions come up after the fact. And just as a reminder, applications are due on June 10th, and we really hope to hear from all of you and see your applications come in.
Thank you all.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.